Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Daily Healing Journal, where I'm sharing my healing journey with you in real time. So, today I want to talk about something that I'm actually really proud of in growth. I used to have this tendency to overshare with people and then rely on their response to clarify and validate if I was in the wrong or if I was in the right without checking in with myself as much. And even if I had checked in with myself, I was relying on people that I thought I trusted to validate my own responses to things and my own opinions on things. And this is an interesting realization for me because a lot of us overshare, especially when we're in that panic state. But it's so empowering when you finally have your own guidance system and you don't have to check in with anyone else. You don't have to check in with anyone else to see how you actually feel about a situation. And this can be really difficult for those of us that have been in abusive relationships and or even friendships where we rely on being accepted as part of the tribe just to make sure that we're not left behind, right? This is a natural feeling, but I really believe that it's important to really clear out the garden, right? Pull all the weeds and get in touch with yourself on what works for you. And I've talked about this a lot in many of my videos, but when you really start to see the benefits of this, that's when you start to notice that what you're doing is working. And that's rewiring those neural pathways. That's that neuroplasticity that I talk about that I love so much. So it's normal to bounce your ideas off people, right? And I think that me being a creative, I always was ready to bounce my ideas off people. And what do you think about this? And, part of that was excitement, but I think a lot of it too was validation. And I would always want to check, like, oh, do you guys like this song? What do you think? Instead of just releasing something. This was gradually put into my mind, not necessarily in my childhood. This actually was something that came later in life due to the nature of my career and what it takes to be in the music industry the old school way, where you had to be approved by all kinds of people before you even stood a chance. So, if you have to talk about things, you want to pass things through people to get that secure decision, that was normal in my industry a long time ago. And when I was practicing these things, I was in my early teens, early 20s. And that was a very big time where I was making decisions. And so I started to cross these wires where I would actually ask friends, family members, relationships, their opinion on things before I even had really asked myself. And most of the time, my intuition was right, but I got used to ignoring my intuition in certain areas of my life, which I do regret, but it's forced me to now go within. It's freeing, it's empowering once you start to get in your own saddle and you hold your own reins and go, hey, wait a minute, I can think for myself. And I think that we all think we do this, but we really don't. Challenge yourself, try it out. We don't even realize how we wait for external voices to tell us how we feel. We do this when we watch the news. And even if you just have it on in the background, your brain is taking that in. That's that subconscious mind. You got to be careful with that. So I used to call friends and I used to wait to talk to them to bounce their opinions off of whatever I had, right? So like, okay, I would tell them something and that, what do you think? And wait on their response. And I kind of, in therapy today, I told my therapist it was one of those moments where I had this realization of I used to go and confide with people. And based on what people said that I thought I trusted, I would then make decisions based on that. And while that can be valuable, it's not valuable when that's how you're handling some difficult situations in your life that you should really internalize first. And it doesn't mean that you need to bounce anything off anyone. You can make your own decisions. But I wasn't confident in doing that, mostly because a lot of times I had to make really hard decisions. I think everybody does. But balancing real life between the music industry was always really difficult for me, and I had to really grow some thick skin in my industry. And so then I thought maybe I'm being a little too harsh in my real personal life. But I've come to learn not true. It's not being harsh, standing up for yourself. And the thing is about when you go and you seek advice from people, they're going to give advice based on their life experience, which can be helpful sometimes. But usually you are on your own path, okay? And I used to feel self-conscious about owning this because it felt selfish, but it should be selfish because if people are trying to advise you on something that they haven't gone through exactly with your past and in your shoes and know all the details of your situation, chances are their advice and their opinion is not going to match what truly aligns with what you should be doing. And it can trick you sometimes, your brain, because if they agree with you, like let's just say you go out and you vent, right? And you're like, yeah, this person said this and it hurt my feelings. And then like you almost wait for that validation of your tribe to go, yeah, you know? And the problem with this is it's comforting, but it's kind of the same as if you're upset and you go out and you binge drink, you binge eat, and you take all of these problems and then you compartmentalize them and go, well, because I'm going through this, I'm going to do XYZ, and it ends up being something that's unhealthy. Now, it doesn't mean that necessarily all these decisions are wrong, but they may not steer you in the direction that you want to go. So there's nothing more empowering than being able to check in with yourself. And this can be tough when you're dealing with very close friends, family relationships, people who can quickly trigger you. I was always so triggered by trying to fix the problem even if I didn't do anything wrong, or even if it wasn't necessarily a situation of right or wrong, but it was a situation of, okay, this is really uncomfortable. I'm just going to say sorry to make it all go away. And I'm going to put extra fluff. Not that was not real, but I was so desperate to fix the situation because I didn't want there to be conflict. I would own things that I shouldn't own. I would make excuses for things and people that I should not. I was basically creating this mirage of things that just lowered myself to make other people feel better. And I think that when we say this, I think people sometimes think, in terms of like bullies and stuff, it's sometimes not that extreme. Sometimes it's really minuscule. And sometimes it's really tiny, the things that we're doing. And it teaches these people that we're okay with that. And it teaches us that we're okay with that. And then we end up in situations that are really messy. And it's not necessarily a case of blaming anyone else. Like we've talked about this many times in my videos, blame is blah, 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 me, and how many fingers are pointed, right? When you're blaming somebody, how many fingers are pointed at the person versus how many fingers are pointed back at you as you blame them, right? So instead of getting into the habit of blaming, I think that acknowledging truths, acknowledging dysfunctional behaviors have been so empowering for me. And you have to remember that it doesn't mean these people are your enemy. Sometimes they are, but you have to remember that these people have their own dysfunctional operating system that they're working on. And if they know that you're going to come to them for advice and they're used to this cycle, they're going to give you the advice that they feel like giving in that moment, probably without even checking internally with how they really feel about it. Okay. Because a lot of times we can go based off of a quick reaction without even checking in with ourselves. And this can go both ways. I am very reluctant. I used to try to give people advice all the time because I thought, well, don't worry, this is how you should do it. And I guess in a way that's kind of what I've been doing with these videos, but I'm not shoving it down anyone's throat. People can come find these videos, and if it clicks with them, great. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. And nothing that I say is going to align exactly for somebody else's situation. That's why I always encourage you guys to, if you are taking any of these videos and applying it to your life, make sure you apply it seriously to your life the way it fits for you, not necessarily in my examples. I do give you guys examples of abusive situations I've been in and situations that I've been in that aren't even necessarily abusive, so that you can see that I'm a person. I'm somebody that's really gone through some things. It's been very difficult on me. And I want you to know that this is coming from my heart and experience. And I know that we can recover together. And I know that by the time some of you are seeing these videos, maybe I'll be fully recovered and moved on to other types of content, which I'm very excited about. I'm already starting to write out the new content. So stay tuned for that, by the way. But it's still going to be my words, my art, my heart, my message. That's who I've always been. It's just coming at you in a different way right now. So check in with yourself. And today I had a situation where I could have obsessed over the problem. In fact, there were multiple, like 3 or 4 different things that I could have obsessed, and my anxiety could have gotten in the way. But instead, put myself in check, I did that box breathing, which I talk about, and I was talking to a friend about that today so that they could apply it to their situation too when they have anxious moments. In through the nose, you're breathing in through the nose for 4 counts, and you're going to hold it for 4, let it out through the mouth for 4, and then hold for 4 seconds. All right? This is called box breathing, and it really helps reset the body. And a lot of times we feel the need to just quickly respond to something. And I struggle with this because I can get triggered when I am being called out for something that isn't true, isn't real. And I've told you guys in other videos, I've obsessed with collecting proof because I've been attacked so many times with people who are threatening and saying things that are not true. So I became this master at really learning how to defend myself. And this is a good clue that you're around the wrong people if you're having to do this. I wish that I had caught on to that, what now seems like a very obvious realization. I wish I had come to that sooner, but it is what it is. We all learn at our own time. So I am becoming the safe place that I've always needed. And this idea was actually really scary to me for a while. Like, wait, what? Like, that just sounds so lonely and scary and weird. And how do I know? Like, why wouldn't I just confide in someone that's older than me or someone that's been in a situation that maybe I'm just now getting in? And while that's good for certain things in life, like if you want to learn how to build a home, for example, there are people out there that you can find that they have built a house a certain way so many times that it is valuable to get their advice on how to do that. There are people who are dive instructors, right? And they have a lot of experience diving. And so that's a very straightforward thing that you could go out and get some advice and get instructed on how to dive or how to cook. But when it comes to life lessons, it's very rare that somebody's going to be able to give you good advice and or give you accurate advice based on what you really need. And I'm not saying you have to ignore a lot of people's advice, but I strongly recommend working on trying to be your own sounding board so that kind of like only you know when you're hungry because only you feel it, right? Other people can't tell you if you're hungry. You could act like you're hangry, right? But really, are you hangry? Are you hungry? Right? So that's basically the same thing. Only you can tell if something's too hot or too cold when you put it to your lips because we all have different sensory, okay? It's the same thing. Only you are going to be able to know if you're hot or cold, right? Everybody has their own temperature. Some people like to be in hotter environments, some people like to be in colder environments. This is the same concept when it comes to seeking advice, when it comes to your emotions and situations. And if you don't know how to do this, this is why the cognitive behavioral therapy is so helpful. And the workbooks that I've been doing and everything, it really helps because it forces you to question why you're doing what you're doing. How does it make you feel? And then you dive into it a little bit deeper. And this type of repetition, when you're doing this, I talked yesterday or 2 days ago about this, keeping the repetition going and being consistent with the change. And then you're going to rewire your brain. So then you'll eventually feel confident enough to make your own decisions without having to ask anybody else for life advice. And by this, I don't mean to completely ignore people who can give you good life advice. I want to reiterate that because I think it's important that we learn that balance. And once you kind of get balanced, you're going to start to feel when you're getting bad advice from people that's selfish. It might be self-serving, and they might not even be doing it on purpose. That's where they really get you, is these people that have good intentions, right? Which most of us have. They might not even realize that through their good intentions, they're actually giving the wrong advice to you because there's no way for them to know what you actually need. So becoming your own advice giver is great. And if you have to sound this off to your therapist or a lawyer or somebody like that, that might be needed. But we're talking very basic stuff. Check in with yourself first. Does it align with your core value system? I've said this from the beginning of this series. But I'm just now starting to feel the benefits of this practiced recovery program that I'm in. So I don't worry. And I do worry a little bit, but not compared to what I used to, right? And I have to remember that because some of this stuff is so messy that when I feel triggered, I just have to remember that, okay, Kristen, why do you feel triggered? What's going on in there? And what is the best way to handle this? A lot of times we become desperate for this validation, especially if we feel shunned and alienated. And, it's okay to get that comfort. But when people start giving advice or you start giving advice, that's the other thing I was just mentioning a bit ago. You know, we can't give people advice most likely on certain things unless they're ready for it. So again, people are coming to the videos because they're ready for it. I'm not forcing this on anyone in particular. This is general advice. It doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're solid when you're able to make your own decisions. And I'm learning because I'll start to feel triggered when people try to tell me what to do. And this was always a struggle for me because I've always been fairly independent, but it's coming at me in different ways where like I really appreciate certain advice, but now I'm able to feel it inside when people are pushing boundaries and going way beyond what I need. And so I know how to feel it out. I know what's best for me right now because I'm the only one that's experienced what I'm experiencing, especially with this abuse. If you've ever felt like you needed to speak to 10 people to validate how you're feeling, I promise that it's possible to build that clarity without having to do that. You just have to start with checking in with your own truth before you check in with other people's truth. And then once you do that, you're going to realize you don't actually need to confide, probably, in other people, maybe with certain situations. But for the most part, that's where you have to believe that once you've checked in with yourself, you know what's best for you. You do. Oh, stuff's falling from the trees. So just journal. Like, what do I really think? What do I really think? Okay. What do I really feel and why? By the way, you can get my journal right here, shameless plug, on Amazon. This is some of my artwork called Pure Imagination on the front. You get that in my Amazon store. Write your stories, write your feelings, ask yourself questions every single day. Write, why do I feel this way? Sit with it. Give yourself that chance. Turn the news off for just a minute. I mean, I highly recommend turning the news off altogether forever, but I'm just saying that this is something that you must be selfish with to get in the practice of being your own guidance system again. So, one of the things I've learned in therapy is send is not your friend, right? So, don't send something until you've really thought about it. And I can struggle with this. I think a lot of people struggle with this because, especially being an emotional human being and an empath, you are alarmed when certain people say certain things and you just sort of want to react and go, hey, stop doing that. Why are you doing that? But you got to remember that your responses need to work for you, not against you. And a lot of times when we react, it actually just creates more chaos and it works against us. So keep this in mind before you respond. And one other thing that I'm finding very interesting through this process, welcome to Key West, that's a little plane, is I am now seeing that I used to confide in people that haven't done any healing and they think they have. There's a lot of people out there that I confided in that haven't done therapy or self-reflection or any growth, and I can tell because their advice, their reactions, and their vibe says it all now. Oh my gosh, that was loud. So these are things that you'll start to recognize once you unwire the old operating system and you start healing. And it doesn't mean you're cruel or mean, and they might think you're weird. They might think, oh, she's not the same anymore. Yeah, you're right. I'm not the same anymore. And if you're somebody watching this that thinks that, I'm proud of that because I still have a huge heart. I just have very strong boundaries and I've figured out what I was doing wrong and I'm correcting that behavior. And that behavior in the old me was enabling bad behavior in others, even if they didn't realize they were doing it. And that's because of whatever they went through in their life and their operating system and how it operates. So be careful about confiding with people that you might be able to trust to pick you up on the side of the road if your car breaks down. But that doesn't mean that they're going to give you good advice or even the right advice, I should say. You just have to remember to check in with your own truth, not everyone else's. And this can happen in politics where people are like, I don't know who to vote for. Well, a lot of times people will get surface with this and go, oh, you should vote for this person. Why? Because it's aligning with what works for them. That's why. And they might think that that's the best answer. Of course they do. Why? Because that's what works for them. You got to give yourself the opportunity to decide what's best for you. You have a completely different life. You have completely different experiences. And it really drives me crazy when people go, oh, they're older, so they're wiser. That is not true at all. They might be wiser in certain things, but that doesn't mean that they're wiser in the way that you need advice, okay? They haven't walked in your shoes and you don't know what kind of repairing they've done. They might think they know everything based on their experience and journey. You might be way younger and you might have gone through way more experiences and different experiences than them. So the advice is going to be way different. So don't ever assume that people that are older or younger have better advice. It has nothing to do with age and everything to do with experience and self-awareness. You ever see those little kids that like seem like they're little geniuses walking around and they seem so wise? Well, that's because that's what they're in touch with, okay? So be careful about assuming that somebody of a certain age or even certain experiences, don't assume that because someone went through something that they know what's best for you. You could have gone through the same exact type of situation. That does not mean that that person's advice or your advice to that person is valid for their journey or your journey. We all experience things differently. We all feel different. That's what I'm talking about with we all get cold or hot differently. We are not all the same. So advice is a very dangerous thing to give if it is directed at someone as if you know everything. We don't know everything. So that's why you got to check in with yourself. You are the best guidance system. You are the best advice giver, but you have to get in touch with that part of yourself first. So you don't have to explain your healing to people that haven't done their own. And this is something that I'm currently struggling with because I love and respect a lot of different people in my life who have fallen in and out of it. But you don't have to explain your healing. And I find myself doing that a little bit. And part of that is because I've lost okay, we see you up there. Part of that is because this is such a new road for me and it's such a different experience, but I see how much it's helped me, how much it's helping other people. And the feedback that I'm getting is way stronger than what I was getting when I was releasing a song here and there. And so I'm hopeful that now this will realign myself with now making the right music and the right things that will now attract the right audience. Maybe before I was making the wrong music. Maybe I wasn't sending out the right vibes because I wasn't in touch with myself enough. And that's what this journey is. This is getting me back in alignment with all of that. So the goal here is to become so self-aligned that peace becomes your default, even when nobody else understands. And I'm starting to feel this, which is so empowering and so cool. And it just goes to show you that it's possible. Whereas I used to just second guess myself if I was alone in what I felt was right for me. And again, I've said this in other videos where when I worked with Wynonna Judd, she said, Kristen, you're different because you're kind of like that girl that's like dance like nobody's watching. And she compared me to her daughter Grace in that I had that like kind of wild horse free spirit, but sometimes it can be lonely. And she said that normal is just a cycle on the washing machine. But it can be lonely, but it's not lonely once you get into this alignment. And that's what I'm talking about. And I experienced that today multiple times where I went through some hard things today where it was like I was tested. And even last night I was tested. And I just wasn't really that bothered. I was a little triggered, but I was able to throw myself back into, okay, don't go and call a ton of people and ask for advice. Get with yourself, think about it yourself. You know what's right. You know the truth. So how are you going to handle this situation? And a lot of times giving ourselves this space creates more peace and clarity, and you're able to communicate your needs and you're able to communicate your truth a lot better than if you're in a reactive state and or taking the advice of other people just so that you could temporarily feel validated. I think a lot of people assume musicians, artists, we put things out there to feel validated. That has never been why I've put stuff out anywhere. However, a lot of times it can feel triggering when you put something out that you care about and nobody responds, nobody reacts. Okay. This happens a lot with artists. And for me, what's so empowering about this journey is whether my videos get a couple of views or they get thousands of views and maybe someday millions of views, for me, I trust that whatever message I'm sending out, whatever song I'm sending out, and whatever art I'm putting out is going to reach the people that it needs to. And having that peace gives me the strength to make my own decisions and have the ability to check in with myself. Maybe it's not meant for millions of people, and that's okay. Maybe not enough people are where I'm at for any of this to make sense. That's okay too. What's important is that I've made the choice, no matter what anybody's opinion is about how I'm handling my healing and recovery, I have decided that this is what's best for me. And it's not going to make sense to everyone. It's not going to make sense to a majority of the people that I surrounded myself with. This is not an act of revenge. This is a revenge on my old self, but this is not an act of revenge on anyone else. This is my healing journey. And this is something that I urge you to look into as well, because there's nothing better than pure honesty with yourself, because that's when you enter that pure authenticity. And we're all unique and we're all different and we all deserve that authentic, awesome journey in life. You don't have to wait for your outer world to validate you. Keep going. All right. I hope that helps you guys today. This is strength. This is not avoidance. I'm not bitter. So I urge you to not be bitter. This is not bitter. It's going to come across bitter to some people because you are challenging the narrative that they always saw you as. Okay. But the people who are meant to be part of your journey will stick with you. You're just building a new foundation. And the fact that other people can't shake that might make other people uncomfortable. Even unconsciously, they might not realize that that makes them uncomfortable. You don't have to explain it. So I'm going to conclude with this type of change, this level of inward growth. It can look selfish because it is, but it's in a good way. It can even look isolating. It can even look kind of crazy to people, especially to the people who haven't done it. But this is solitude. This is not isolation. There's a huge difference. Okay. This isn't crazy. This is going beyond what we've been programmed to think is normal. And you're allowed to do that. Isn't that awesome? How empowering is that? You don't have to let the outer world or outer things validate you. I hope that resonates with you today. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.